Welcome to Brand Builders TV. Deep dive topics, tools and resources brought to you by global thought leaders from within the Brand Builders Club. This show gives you access to the strategies that you can use to move forward with ease and flow in every area of your life and business. In today's show, which is the final part of this three-part series, Mary is going to go deeper into how you can become the leader you know you can be. It's Mary's intention that you take away some practical things you can do to keep your internal saboteur at bay and ensure you're equipped to take courageous action in pursuit of your purpose. Learn it, model it, and get shit done. Let's go.
Good morning, Brand Builders, and welcome to Brand Builders TV, this Wednesday morning 10 o'clock slot. And it's me, Mary Gregory, your Future Fit leader who supports all leaders being future fit and up for making a big difference in the world. Welcome to part 3 of my 3-part series of programs, all about introducing you to your potential and unlocking your potential as a future fit leader. And good morning to Fiona, lovely to see you there, and lovely to feel the love as well. Thank you very much for that. So today we are looking at getting over yourself a bit today. So we all have an ego, we all have an inner critic, we all have a self-saboteur, and that's what today is all about, is how do we make friends with our self-saboteur? How do we actually manage ourselves so that we can achieve the amazing things that we're capable of achieving as future fit leaders? So how this fits in with what we've been looking at so far is that in our in the first program that I did on our series of Future Fit Leaders, we looked at the 6 C's. So the 6 elements that contribute to you being a future fit leader. And then in part 2, we focused on number 2, which is all about creating your purpose and being clear and having clarity around your purpose. And we did some exercises around that to help you get clearer around your purpose and add extra understanding and commitment to that purpose. Well, having woken up your purpose, I hope that you're now in a position where you have greater clarity and you're also wanting to take some action around that. And when that actually starts to happen, when we start to take that action, what then tends to happen is our inner critic or our inner saboteur or our imposter, whatever name you like to give it, that is something that starts to wake up and may start making a lot of noise in service of holding us back. Now, I say in service because, you know, that part of ourselves, I believe that every part of ourselves offers something to us, whether we like it or not, or whether it makes us uncomfortable or not. It still offers us something. And today we're going to be exploring a bit of that, but also looking more at how we can make friends with our inner saboteur and how creatively we can relate to that part of ourselves so that it starts to be a more supportive element of who we are. I just want to say good morning to Sammy. Hello, Sammy. Lovely to hear you and to see you there. Thank you for watching. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to look firstly at, you know, what goes on. Why does our inner saboteur wake up in the first place? And acknowledge ourselves, the fact it is awake. It actually is an acknowledgement that you are a human being and that you're doing stuff in the world. So it's really important that we have a look at that. We're then going to start looking at our saboteur from a more metaphorical point of view. And I really like metaphor because it actually helps us express things that ordinarily we might not be able to express, but it also gives us insights and understanding around the different parts of ourselves by looking at things in that sort of visual or representative way that metaphor offers for us. So we're going to do that. We're going to look at that from 2 different types of metaphors, and I'm going to invite you to join in from that perspective to consider what your own metaphor might be for your inner saboteur. And then finally we're going to do a short guided visualization at the end, and I'll tell you more about that when we get to that, but that's again linked to quietening that voice that might be making too much noise for us at the moment and also looking at what we focus on and how that can help us shift our focus so that we can focus on being even more successful than we already are. Because I have it that everyone in the Brand Builders community is successful, otherwise you wouldn't be here already and you wouldn't be doing what you're doing already. So all wonderful stuff. So let me move on then and just double check where I'm going to, because I want to just have a conversation with you first of all about why is it that our inner saboteur wakes up in the first place. So in part 2, we looked at waking up and getting greater clarity around your purpose. And I hope that that's been helpful to you, being much clearer about what is your contribution to the world. What is the difference that you want to make? And you may well have started taking some action on those things. And, you know, in service of the legacy that you're going to leave as a leader, you know, taking that action may well have woken up your inner saboteur. And so on that count, I'm going to congratulate you. Congratulations for waking up your inner saboteur. Because when our inner saboteur or inner critic or imposter, whatever terminology you use for that part of you inside yourself that might be discouraging you or holding you back in some way, when that part of us is awake, that is a sign that we are playing outside of our comfort zone. And actually playing outside of our comfort zone is valuable for us as future fit leaders. So part of being a future fit leader is all about striving for growth, striving for making a difference. And if we were just playing in our comfort zone all the time, our inner saboteur wouldn't need to be awake and warning us of all the dangers and all the things that there are ahead and reminding us of whether we can do it or not do it. That wouldn't be awake. But the fact that that is awake in us, that is an indication that you are doing stuff in this world that is taking you out of your comfort zone. So I want to congratulate and acknowledge you for that. So having acknowledged that, we also want to consider how loud and noisy your inner saboteur is. And you've got that inner critic, you've got that imposter, but how much are you allowing that part of yourself to rule the roost? Now, I've sometimes come across people who said, well, you know, that part of myself, I just want to get rid of it altogether. And I have to admit, in my life, I've said to myself, oh God, it's such a blooming nuisance having this part of myself that's giving me a hard time, that's telling me I'm not good enough. Just go away, leave me alone. That is kind of something I want to do. I want to get rid of. It's very noisy, Sammy's saying. It might be my dogs have just been barking. I hope they're not a manifestation of my inner critic. I think they're more a manifestation of my inner joy, actually. But anyway, I think they've stopped barking now, Sammy. So as I was saying, sometimes we feel like we want to get rid of that part of ourselves. So before we launch into trying to just squash that down and get rid of it and file it away, I'd like to invite you to think about how valuable is that part of ourselves to us? What contribution does our inner critic make towards us? And Sammy, thank you for the clarity. So Sammy's talking about my inner critic is noisy. Absolutely, your inner critic can be very noisy. And it's about how we manage that level of noise. But before we get into managing that level of noise, how does your inner critic contribute to some of the qualities you possess? Because wherever there's light, there's always shadow, and wherever there's shadow, there has to be light. So there's always two parts, two sides to the coin, as it were. How does your inner critic contribute to some of the positive qualities you possess? And I'll give you a couple of examples. So for example, having an inner critic supports us to have greater humility. So it stops us from being that big, all bombastic person that might take over the room and be insensitive to other people. So those are that's one example of some of the qualities that an inner critic might support us with. Also, being a leader, being a future fit leader means being compassionate towards yourself, but also towards others. So our inner critic keeps us alert to the fact that all of us are human beings. We all have foibles. And therefore, you know, we can recognize when other people are feeling like they're holding themselves back or feeling uncertain or unsure or anxious. It means that we can genuinely empathize with where they're coming from and demonstrate a real compassion towards that, because we understand it ourselves from our own experience with our inner critic. So our self-saboteur, our inner critic, teaches us, the lessons it's teaching us is about being compassionate towards ourselves and towards others. And what we're going to look at today is not just so much about the self-compassionate element, but also how can we get our inner critic more to play to our tune rather than us playing to the inner critic's tune. And that brings me on to the whole notion of using metaphor. And yeah, I'm just checking what Sammy's saying there. It makes me more conscientious. Brilliant, Sammy. Absolutely. That's a great example of how our inner critic will support us and bring qualities to us that we might not necessarily have if it didn't exist. If we didn't have an inner critic altogether, we might not be so conscientious and sensitive to where other people are coming from. So I'd just like to then think about a bit more on this metaphor theme of how our inner critic, sometimes we experience our self-saboteur as being in the driving seat, as controlling us. So I know from my own perspective that there may be days where I'm thinking, you know, I'm really holding myself back because the noise in my head is all about, oh, you can't possibly do that. You know, I've recently had my book published. Why would anybody want to read your book? And notice how I'm already even manifesting my inner critic here right next to me with my hands, because we do manifest our inner critics or our self-saboteurs in different ways. But there are days it will be very noisy and it'll be running the show, and I'll allow that part of myself, because it is part of myself, it's not outside of me, it's part of who I am. I'll go with that part of myself, and I might not be particularly effective that way. I might play a smaller day that day. And what I'm curious about and interested in is how do we get over ourselves in those situations? Thanks, Sammy. I'm so pleased you enjoyed my book. That's a big thrill for me to hear that. So how do we keep our inner critic? How do we, rather it being the conductor of our orchestra, so let's use the metaphor of the orchestra, rather than it being the conductor of our orchestra, how do we keep it as part of a blended sound that the orchestra creates? So I'd like you to think about then, using metaphor, decide what instrument in your orchestra you would like your inner critic or your self-saboteur to be playing. What is it that they're going to be doing? So for example, my inner saboteur is a bit of a beat of the drum. It's there, beating in the background all the time. And sometimes that drum beat can get too loud. And that's when it starts to put the whole orchestra, the whole blended sound of my orchestra, it starts to put it off and starts to make it sound a bit, oh, it's a bit dominating. I mean, I have an example. Yesterday we were driving home, we were on a long journey, and we were playing music the whole way. And the settings on the radio were causing the bass to come out really, really strong. Oh, Sammy's is a trumpet. I'd love to hear how that sounds when it's off. But also when it's in tune, trumpet playing can bring such melody to an orchestra as well. So it's really about how do we get this tuned in. So we were in the car, this was really off. It really destroyed our experience of listening to the music that we wanted to really hear. So we had to refiddle with the settings. We had to access, it was a radio we weren't familiar with. We had to access the settings, look at how we could turn the bass down, bring up the higher notes a bit louder, so it all mellowed out and became a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful sound. And I love that. So Sammy's just designed to be more like a flute than a trumpet. So yeah, so maybe it is about how can you transform your instrument, the representation of your inner critic, into a different instrument so it makes a different sound that contributes to the overall orchestra of who you are. My drum beat, what I like to do is let it come down a bit and more of a in the background that's giving a nice bit of rhythm to my life rather than this thumping loud banging on the big drums that can dominate at times. So like we turn the settings on a radio, think about how you can turn the settings on your personal orchestra so that each part of yourself is playing in harmony and in tune, and recognizing the quality that your self-saboteur might contribute to the whole of your piece of music that you're creating, but not allowing it to dominate or to ruin the sound that you're creating as well. So that's one way of being playful with your inner critic and with your self-saboteur, and just thinking about it from a different perspective, turning down the volume. Turn down the volume on that inner voice that might be giving you a hard time, or change the tone of it. Like Sammy has changed the tone from trumpet to flute. It kind of gives it a whole different impact. It creates a different impact that it has on you. So I'm going to take this inner critic element a bit further now, and I'm going to introduce you to another friend of mine. So still sticking with this theme of metaphor, I'm going to introduce you to a different type of metaphor. So we thought about the orchestra, we talked about, inner critic or self-saboteur. It's just part of the whole scope of the orchestra that you have, that you can rely on as your inner resources, and you can tune it in to work in harmony with the rest of yourself. But I also wanted to give a bit more attention to our self-saboteur, to our inner critic itself, that part of ourselves. So I want to think about using metaphor for this, and I'm going to introduce you to the idea of thinking about your inner critic as an animal. So just have a sense of, if your inner critic, if you could identify an animal that would represent your inner critic for you, what would that animal be? And to help you, I hope this is going to be helpful to share with you, I'm going to introduce you to my inner critic, who has been with me for many, many years. And it's a she. I first met her probably in my late 20s, early 30s, when I first trained to be a trainer, actually. And we all we had to do lots of presenting to each other. And that really woke up my inner critic, who is in the form of this parrot. My inner critic, the animal that represents my inner critic, is a parrot. And how she came to be, this is Polly, my parrot, how Polly came to be was I was on this Train the Trainer program way back in the late 80s, 90s, and we had to present training sessions to each other. And I'll never forget the day I had to present mine. I was absolutely terrified. The voice in my head was really boo, boo, boo. So Polly here, who I eventually named her as, was really squawking away in my head. And I stood up. I actually volunteered to be the first one because I thought that's the way of getting it over and done with. And I stood up and immediately said to her before we started, well, you're all going to laugh and think this is a load of rubbish. And I expressed that out to the room, which actually was Polly, my inner critic, manifesting in me and coming out and sharing that with a group. Now, at that time, nobody knew I was going to be rubbish. People were quite expectant and excited about what I was going to present. But because I allowed my inner critic to be conducting my orchestra, as it were, I then expressed it out to the room. And I'm not sure that was the most helpful thing to do at that time. So there is something about recognising who your inner critic is, what is the representation that they hold for you, and then in that sense, what are the qualities that your inner critic has that you might not like, and how might you manage and adjust, just like we talked about the setting before, adjust those qualities so that they're less unhelpful to you. I like that. Sammy's is a porcupine. That sounds very, very prickly and spiky, and oh yeah, I can really get the metaphor in that of it being uncomfortable. So how Polly manifests herself to me is that she's squawks. You know how parrots squawk? She can squawk dreadfully. So when I'm at my worst point with my self-saboteur really going for it, there'll be a lot of squawking going on. In fact, in my time, I've even had flocks of Pollys flying around me. Thankfully, I've got her down to just one these days, but she can be really squawking. So one way I can manage her is to invite her to just turn the squawk down, quieten it down, soften the tone, try not to be so, what's the word, in terms of being squawky, the type of voice that you bring on. Maybe try and teach my parrot to sing. I thought that would be a really good thing to do. So when Polly is having a really tough day and giving me a really hard time, I'll actually invite her to go away and write a song or become more tuneful in how she communicates with me. And that can change the whole way that I relate to myself, because my voice in my head, that squawky, parroty voice, starts to shift in the tone and intonation. And when I do that, that then helps me become more centered, more grounded, feeling better about myself, feeling like I'm almost turning that parrot voice into more of a coaching voice, a more supportive voice that can really help me with what I'm facing, what I'm dealing with. So that's just a few ideas for you to think about, is in what way does your inner critic or your self-saboteur manifest itself? What is the animal? If it's a porcupine, it's very spiky. What, Sammy, could you then do? How could you modify that spikiness around your porcupine that would help bring it into a more supportive way of being with you? So this is all really about how you, your great self, your higher self, becomes the conductor of your orchestra. And that animal that may well be wreaking havoc by giving you lots of a hard time, you soften the tone of it. You maybe you can put dollops of cotton wool or something on the spikes, or wrap your porcupine up in cotton wool so it's less spiky. Give it a hug, maybe what it needs is a hug, I don't know. These are all just imaginative and playful ways that you can manage yourself and reduce the impact, the negative impact of your inner critic. Recognizing it's still part of yourself and it still contributes to you in some way. Great, I'm glad you've got some things to think about there. And it really is about being conscious and developing that compassionate side of ourselves. Being compassionate, being compassionate towards Polly, she's serving her purpose here. She's helping me have humility. She's helping me be compassionate. But I need to give some compassion towards my inner critic, towards my self-saboteur, so that I can start to soften the effect that it has on me. Oh, I really like that, Sammy. So making marshmallows on the spikes of tasty to me. I might be tempted to eat some of those. So that sounds like a really good way of dealing with it. So those are two ways that metaphorically we can become more playful with our inner critic, and we can shift the tone from being critical to being more compassionate. And that's why it fits so well with the fifth C in my 6 C's of Future Fit Leader, that being self-compassion and practicing self-compassion is a really helpful way to manage our inner lives and work on ourselves and be a compassionate leader. The final way we're going to look at today, though, is thinking about, we've looked at 2 ways that we can look at it metaphorically, but the other thing to think about when we're thinking about managing our inner or our inner critic is noticing what we tend to focus on. So the challenge that we often have with our inner critics is that part of ourselves is really, really adept at noticing what, and maybe pointing out to ourselves, that's not good enough, you could have done that better, this is never going to happen because you're always a wuss about this sort of thing. However your inner critic talks to you or relates to you, often it's focused on the negative and the things that aren't working. So a kind of antidote to that is to start training yourself and encouraging that part of yourself to notice the things that are working. So how to address that today is I'm going to invite you to join me on a quite a short guided inner meditation, focusing on gratitude. So being grateful and noticing the things in your life that are working. That's a way that we can really counteract that part of ourselves that might be noticing all the things that aren't working and all the things that are missing rather than all the things that we already have. Very, very powerful to keep working on ourselves from that perspective. Someone once said to me, what you focus on grows. So if you focus on lack, focus on what's not working, you keep creating more of what's working, and you keep creating more of lack. So how counteracting that harsh inner voice by really focusing on the things that do work in your life and all the things that you can be grateful for, all the positive qualities that you do have. So I'm going to take us through this guided meditation now, and I'm going to invite you to just sit back in your chair, get yourselves nice and comfortable. And as you're sitting back in your chairs and you're noticing your back against the back of your chair, you put your feet on the floor so they're well grounded on the floor, and I invite you to just close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just breathe in and then breathe out. And notice again your breath. Breathe in and breathe out. And this is a gratitude meditation. So I'm going to invite you to be grateful for your breath and to notice how breathing in, you're breathing in a life force, and as you're letting go. You're letting go of that critical voice. You're engaging with a passionate voice, and you're starting to notice all the things that you can be grateful for. So start to just engage with the lives that you're really, really happy with and grateful for. And I invite you to begin with your own body. Say thank you to your organs, your heart, your lungs, your liver, your stomach. They've all been working hard for you, even while you've been asleep. They still keep working, and when you wake up, they're there working for you again. Your stomach might be telling you you need to eat. Your heart will still be pumping round the blood in your body. Think about all the different elements that there are in your body. The fact that you can feel sensations, you can feel when it's warm, you can feel when it's cold. You can breathe the air. You can see with your eyes, you can hear with your ears, and all the opportunities, the sights and senses that you possess provide for you in your life. So be really grateful and thank your body for doing its job just there in the background without you even knowing. Then I invite you to move into your environment. Consider about where you live. Notice the temperature. How warm is it? And how do you feel in your environment? Be grateful for the home that you're living in and the utilities that run your home. Possibly that you're not even conscious of those half the time, that they're helping your life function through running your home. And then think beyond your home to the countryside and the town that you live in and the community that surrounds you and the opportunities that there are in that community. and be grateful for all those opportunities and for the comfort and warmth and shelter of your home and your community. Then move into thinking about the people in your life. Who are the people in your life that support you? The people that you love and who show you love and give you love. Your family, your friends, your work colleagues. Think about the contribution that they make to you and to you being the person that you are, and be grateful to them and the contribution that they make. Keep going. Keep thinking about all the different elements of your life and all the different elements of you to being present on this planet. What are the things that you are most grateful for? Think about the wonderful world that we live in. The fact we have air to breathe, beautiful nature, things that bring us comfort and joy. Be grateful for all of those. And I'd like to complete this meditation by acknowledging and being grateful for the life that you're leading and being the person that you are, and for being blessed to be you. So I'd like to bring you back to our room now, so open your eyes again, and I'd just like to check how everyone is. I hope that that has really helped quieten your inner critic, your self-saboteur, and also helped you focus on the different elements of your life that you're really, really grateful for, and all the success that you're achieving already in your life. And that concludes my 3 programs about unlocking your future fit leader potential. Remember the 6 C's. I'll probably be starting to write about them a lot more in the future, as that's part of what evolved out of this inquiry into what it takes to being a future fit leader. Tune into your purpose and know that you're here to cause a huge difference on the planet, and you as a leader will leave a great legacy. Tune into that and keep getting the clarity around why you're here on this planet, what you were born to do. And finally, be grateful for your inner critic, because that part of yourself is an indication you are playing in your comfort zone. You are making a big difference in the planet, to the planet, and to being a future fit leader. And also, it's about focusing on the things that you can be grateful for. Play with your inner critic. Shift the noise and the sound that it makes towards you and the things it might say, but also be grateful for it and for that part of yourself and for the many different elements that you have in your life. Thank you so much. I don't want to overrun too much. It's been a real pleasure doing this. Thank you for entertaining me, and thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you sometime soon. Bye-bye for now. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Fiona. Bye-bye.
I hope that you've enjoyed the show today as much as we've enjoyed making it for you. If you've got anything out of this episode, please do tell someone else how they can subscribe to the Brand Builders TV channel at youtube.com/brandbuilderstv. Why not join us at our next Brand Builders Thinkubator, a global mastermind that we run every week to take away the loneliness of being in business on your own. For more information and to book your place, visit light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. That's light.brandbuilders.club/Thinkubator. Until next time, be the ripple that you wish to see in the world, and we'll see you soon.